This year at the WTC, Orks are the master of war. As we look at the Great Wall, they bring many dispositions from around the world. As orc players, war bosses represent the wall, we are able to see the diverse lists and dispositions that were brought forward. So even though the vast majority of the field is taken hold, we actually have lists of every disposition. Therefore, I wanted to take a look at those. So I do at least have one list from every disposition. And then, of course, I have lists from other dispositions as well. This is live, so I interact with live chat. What's up, you gets that are here? Audio's fixed. What's up? And shout out to the rewatch gang. So there's some fun lists out here. Some were wonky. And I just want to talk about a bunch of different ones. This should give some creativity and some guidelines for at least what people are thinking for how you play different quote unquote dispositions. As I know, the majority, based off the stats that we look at on Wall Wednesdays, show that the vast majority of you guys are playing take and hold anyways. So even though I will look at a take and hold list, I have every disposition. So I'm starting off with my bias preference of disposition / detachment, which is the Dread Mob. Now, we do have an understanding of how Dread Mob works already. We do know that, mechs. Sorry, guys. Wow, that was horrible. Excuse me in the audio. We do know that mechs mostly suck, but there are some cool things that he brought. Now, this is Thomas, and he came out with some unusual tech. Now, Thomas is from Team France, which is typically a pretty respectable team. Therefore, I had to at least take this into like a real consideration. Sorry, guys, that cough came out of nowhere. So he brought a Beast Boss on Squigosaur with a big brick of pigs. That was wild. A Big Mech with Tank Busters, Tractor Blaster, which I was a little surprised at because with the custom Mega Blaster, it's actually pretty good with the Tank Buster squad, and it can kind of act like a shock attack gun, similar range. But I guess he really hates fly units, huh? Get Finder goggles, a Big Mech with shock attack gun on a unit of Luas with dead shiny shooters. Absolutely been loving this unit. Had fun times with it though. It is outrageous in this detachment. When I had this unit pop off, right, blowing enemy tanks, Bo-Katans, demons, whatever off the board with this unit, then end up losing 9 out of 10 models in the unit, right? Because you could take hazards on 1, 2s, and 3s. He does have a second and a third unit of that though. So because of the points, the ability to have redundancy in the dead shiny shooters, and even with attacks on the shock attack gun, he went forward and brought triple of that, which is common in what we've seen when you brought Dread Mob in the past, because most of the time vehicles, walkers, stuff like that take too much hazards, and in this case, you'll do that points trade. He did bring Zagrot Wartsnaga. He did bring the 2 run herders with his big brick. They do have a cool 12-inch reactive. You won't do it every game, but it is cool that it's there. WAAAGH Gutsmack appearing on every single orc list so far that I could see. 2 small units of Gretchen. A Big Mech Dockerig, just one. But I love Big Mech Dockerigs in general. Most people do right now. From all the WTC lists I was looking at, the majority of lists had at least 1, if not 2, Docker rigs on them, regardless of what detachment they were and disposition they were. So you're going to see that as we're looking at lists today too. So shout out to everybody who got a hold of these guys. If you're new starters, you're like, man, that's awesome to have this. But in Dread Mob, definitely been enjoying it. You can decide to let it take hazards. You can roll it out, even though you get sustain. You're like, well, if I just roll sustain again, it's fine because the rocket gets sustained. What I'm actually willing to take hazards on is the full rerolls to hit with this one, right? So you're like 1 CP, full rerolls to hit. Hopefully I retain heavy, and then I'll just roll my button out. If it's lethal, it's cool. If it's sustained, cool. If it's minus AP, it's kind of the bad case. You can, though, be risky because you're only rolling 2 dice. Right, that's the difference. You don't have that many dice that you're rolling for the gun. So per weapon, volume, damage, CP investment, everything, it actually works really nice. And then remember, it can -1 damage. So pretty cool. And it's on this little thing. 1 commando, right? So, it kind of doesn't fit the theme, quote unquote, you would think from Dread Mob, but it does because priority assets, you need to actually have a couple action units depending on the matchup. If it's something like a take and hold matchup with priority, well, you're likely to just be able to stand kind of on your home and be like, okay, I'm just going to pop this out, or I'll walk into the middle and do it. It's kind of a little bit more reserved game plan. If it's something versus like a mirror, though, and you want to be doing actions everywhere and fighting the enemy to stop them from doing actions where you're both doing priority, well, then you want some kind of infiltrators that can do it early or kill or fight little units that might take it early or take up the space if they try to slow your mob, and they might try to slow Zod. So, interesting, good tech there. So you sometimes don't want to pay for it because you're like, I could bring more DACA, but these units are already so cheap with his bricks. And I think that's where the pigs come into play. So the pigs keep the enemy honest, and they keep the backbone of your wall respectable and actually durable, because you'll send forward Zod, you're send forward a brick of pigs, and then behind that you have all these infantry units and a couple, the Mech Walker, all laying down fire support while you're fighting over objectives, and then people are doing actions. And then he did have 2 little trucks, so that works pretty well for the Ludas in general. So I really liked this Dread Mob list and for the priority assets, and we actually do have more priority assets lists right now that we can look at. But I'm actually going to move from this list, and then we're going to look at every disposition at least once, and then I'll go back and relook at dispositions if you guys want. So chat, let me know you guys are here as well if you want me to keep talking about priority as well, because I'm a big fan of priority right now. You have just enough actions. It still, kind of stimulates the mind to have tactics depending on what matchup of dispositions you are. You can kind of act as a, opposite to take and hold, which is popular right now across the meta. One thing I want to say too, though, is as we look at these dispositions, which I'm going to move on, like I said, is that if you guys can guess, I'll let chat guess. Or maybe we'll make this a poll question. But I guess it's too late right now to make it a poll question. What I will say is Orks hardly had Purge the Foe out there. So let's move on to the next one. Shout out to our boy Thomas. Fundamentals to Dread Mob right now, from what we're seeing, you'll see as we look at other lists, though, are bricks of Ludas, usually only like 1 unit of tank busters, just for like ignore cover, and they just essentially pop almost everything. Because remember, if you got more DACA, you're getting, maybe people don't know because it's been a while since people played. I should be more clear. Sorry, guys, if you already know how this works. If you don't, cool. This is how it works. Dread Mob work, and Ludas work in Dread Mob. So you declare your WAAAGH, and all your infantry are going to get sustained. So that means your Ludas, boom, automatically sustain. Tank plus as well, boom, automatically sustain. Then you're going to have the button. You, at this point, because you don't mind taking some hazardous, I guess, because you're a psycho git, you're going to choose lethal. So then you got sustain and lethal on all your Luda guns. You got rapid fire because you're within dead shiny shooter range. And then, of course, for the tank buses as well, they're going to probably choose lethal also. And if you're going into something like a Catan or a Demon or a tank that maybe has to throw a 3-up armor save and no armor of contempt access, or maybe you just want to kill them and you're going to, even if they have access to it, you're going to use big shells for bigger gets on your Ludas. So you can get +1 wound, +1 damage. And then you're going to re-roll the entire hit roll. Every 6 on your Luda brick is going to be a sustained and a lethal. So you're going to just re-roll fish for that, get all those off. And then every single Luda def gun is 3 damage. And then every custom Mega Blaster is D6 +1 damage, on top of the shock attack gun now being D6 +1 damage. So and then you might immediately just blow up your unit like I did when I did this. But you're also deleting that enemy vehicle a lot of the times when you're doing that. So you don't have to double down, but if it's that one and go, like I'll trade this Luda brick for a Catan, for example. Or kind of like Demon, if I can do like big shells for bigger gets. So that really does go off. And then you have everything else that's coming around, still scoring around it, and getting into a fight. So really cool little thing, but it's very fundamentals to Dread Mob right now. And then we move on. So we move on to Purge the Foe. This is actually the disposition with the lowest, from what I'm aware of, from what I've seen, representation. So the least amount of Orc players were playing to Purge the Foe. This might actually be the only one, to be honest. I don't know if I've seen another one. So shout out to John Starvocalis. Sorry, guys. So that being said, and somebody's saying right now too, yeah, don't worry, dude. We're gonna see the recon list you're talking about. Yeah, I think that's the one I pulled up right here. But I think if there's more, I think I have a bunch of duplicates of dispositions, just so you guys know, for rewatch game. But for this Purge the Foe disposition, we have the Bullet Boys with the new gets on the block with the Equatorial Horde. Yeah, so shout out to the Discord members, right? We were talking about this matchup if someone's making this and he's taking this list as local events. And this is pretty awesome in theory. It's one of the less looked at ones because people are like, well, I'll just play Freebooter or whatever for the Equatorial Horde. But Bully Boys was pretty awesome. Just take boy bricks or mobs, whatever, and then scout forward and then bring in Mega Knobs after. So let's take a look at this list. It's the only Purge one from what I've seen, but it's a pretty exciting one in my opinion. A lot of mind games for the enemy, and your list game plan's pretty straightforward here. So we have Gazgul Thraka, a Pain Boy, and then a Big Boy Brick as Unit 1. Unit 2 is a War Boss with Big Gob, a Pain Boy, and 20 Boys, of course. Unit 3, War Boss with Cunning Hunter. So now you actually have a reactive move on the Bully Boys. I find that to be awesome. A Pain Boy, and then another Boy unit for that third unit. The fourth unit that acts kind of like a boy mob as well, which will also have built-in scouting, is Zagra Wartsnaga. So now you have Zagra. He does have the Gretchen. I mean, the Zagra, the Run Herders, because now you can choose not to pay for those guys and have 10 points lower. As Unit 4. And then his Unit 5 is a brick of Mega Knobs with twin kill saws, and then a Mega War Boss and Mega Armor with a teleporter. So there's always back and forth on this that I love to talk about with people. Do I bring a truck for my War Boss and Mega Armor? So it's actually on the field when I want it to be, depending on the matchup, and I can just call the wall and get him in the fight? Or do I teleporter and use him as a QRF, like a quick response unit, where I take an assessment of the field and then I bring in this teleporter unit? I'm a fan of having the teleporter option. Gives the enemy, kind of keeps the enemy honest, can set up heroic interventions. It gives you a benefit to actually being somewhat aggressive, force an enemy to screen. It's a good stuff. So generally, I like it. And then also another thing you always talk about is twin kill saws, right? The one thing I'll say here is, yes, I know you get a low amount of hits, and I know the hits are unappealing and unexciting, but 3 AP and almost spooning on every single hit you get is quite a good turnaround result. So I really do still like twin kill saws for most of the time I'm going into fights. And if I'm going into like Terminators, which are popular and a lot of them are 4 wounds, if you're going to like Space Wolf Terminators, right, they're T6, innately -1 to wound. So you're like, okay, well, I'm strength 12. So when you're on 2s innately, -1 will be 3s, but I'm twin link, so I'm re-rolling. And then I'm -3 AP. So even with your Armor of Contempt, you're still taking you to your invuln. So of course you might only put 10 to 12 wounds on them, but they're all going to be taking them on their invulns. They're going to fail like half of them. So you might kill about 3 or 4 Terminators, depending on how that spikes, give or take, because you're going to at least re-roll hits and such. So don't underestimate twin kill saws, even though I know they suck for volume. In the meta right now, like if you go into Vitrix Guard, for example, another unit that if they don't use Armor of Contempt, they're taking 5 up armors because they don't have an invuln, from what I remember. I guess unless they're Librarius, and then they might have one now, I guess. So whatever. Then you have a Gretchen unit and a Mando. So high. Oh, and WAAAGH. I didn't mean to overlook you, WAAAGH. So this is pretty straightforward for a purge, right? I'm scouting forward, like 3 mobs of boys, Zagra scouting forward, and then I'm dropping in a Mega Knob brick wherever I can find it on the field. And then remember, one of those is a gas brick. So I found this very exciting. So shout out to the Bully Boys that are going to get some play out here. And from what I understand, it is the only Purge the Foe list from the WTC for Orks. If I miss one, let me know. Maybe I'll find it. Shout out to Rewatch Game. Maybe they'll let me know. And yeah, don't worry, chat. I see you guys with the double stomp. I have that list. Yep, I have that list up here that I'm gonna pull up for you guys. But first, we're gonna get through every disposition, and then I'll pull up all the crazy lists that I found, because these are just lists that I'm like, okay, these are the ones that I think are gonna be relevant. So, I don't know how far teams will go, example and such, but I think it is nice that people who have been playing with Bully Boys, I think this is a great kind of list for like an RTT, where you're like, I'm just gonna go play. I want a straightforward game plan. I haven't got a lot of reps in. I just want this edition to go. Boom. I take on my bully boys. I take my equatorial horde. I scout forward. I WAAAGH. Boom. I WAAAGH. Boom. I just keep getting into fights. Now, the hard part is having the backbone to have all those boys, I guess. So it's not that casual. You still have to be able to play with that many and have that many built up. But as for game plan, boom, very straightforward. Fun thing is I was hoping in my heart sometimes for banner knobs. So I've seen some of these lists where they have banner knobs. Didn't end up this way though. Maybe you want the pain, the damage from it. You're already gonna have a Vinful, so being T6 isn't that big of a difference. So a good conversation there. Nonetheless, his opinion is who thinks a week's long enough time. So nonetheless, Austin purged the full list, and I'm glad we at least got to see one, because I remember when I was going through everything, I was like, I ain't seen one purge the full list yet. But that goes to what our channel, you and me, our initial assumptions were when we were looking at every orc disposition when it first dropped, and I was like, I like Dread Mob, I like the Hunt because Dread Mob used to be purge. The Hunt, I like Bully Boys, but I don't like purge for orcs. And I don't think orcs like purge. And at first, people were using it, and we were getting results, maybe because points and stuff like that, or just skews, whatever it may be. But nonetheless, purge is the one that has the least amount of representation, and even as time passed, the least amount of play. So we'll see if that changes when our codex drops. But as of this time of the recording, we'll know next year, next WTC. But shout out to John. Let me drink some water because I'm in. And actually, let me get a shout out to, before we jump back into the video, transporting a full Warhammer army, especially an orc horde, can be a battle in itself. The TTRPGo large magnetic miniature carrying case is built to carrying armies over 3,000 points with adjustable metal trays to give you room for everything from boys to vehicles, and your biggest centerpiece gets. Once your bases are magnetized, your model stays secured to the trays without being packed within foam. And because a massive army gets heavy fast, the case includes a detachable trolley handle and wheels, so you can roll the wall into your local battle. Check it out using my affiliate link in the description. It helps support WAAAGH tactics at no additional cost to you. Protect your models, save your backs, and roll into the next call of the wall. And now we remind everybody why red ones go faster, where we have a disruption list. Here we have Cult of Speed with more DACA. So this was here we go. So we start off with a unique version of, first of all, let me just say, this is one of those theoretical dispositions for orcs where orc players tell me and they try it and they're like, I like it. But it is, people think it's a good one because it's all around the battlefield. You're going to be around the battlefield anyways. You might as well be standing over there and doing actions, and you don't have to necessarily be good at holding your ground because you're kind of squishy as an orc. So there's a bunch of different opinions on this, and I personally love Cult of Speed, and we've seen it, and so we'll see what's been picked up right here. We've seen this combo from Stephen Paprine in the past, so this is another, but this is a different player, right? Shout out to chat. They said this guy's from Greece. Okay, thanks for that. Make sure we found out. I wasn't sure. So, for the Bully Boys list, I lied. All right, so we have Zagrot Wartsnaga with 10 Gretchen. So this is maybe the first time I've ever seen Zod without his 20-man unit. So I am interested in that. Is there a truck? Maybe he goes in a truck. Maybe. Okay. So then we have Gretchen with Zod. It does make his profile way smaller, but it's very different in that way. If he gets in the truck, he can scout that truck forward. So, then we have a big mech with shock attack going with Ludas with dead shiny shooters. In this case, they aren't in Dread Mob, so they're only getting sustain, which is still pretty fire. One boss Schnickerot, one Wazdaka Gutsmech. I agree with the Schnickerot. Of course, you're doing disruption. 2 Warbiker units, 2 trucks, 2 Big Mac Docker rigs. So they're not getting any buffs from what I'm aware of. Yeah, they're not getting any buffs from either of the detachments. So this is just straight efficiency for what they are in data sheets. Keep that in mind. Then we have 3 bricks of Def Coptas. Now from Stephen Paprine, if we talked about this, if you guys didn't know, he was the git who got second place, lost to the Green Tide player before the Tide player got the Tide list got nerfed, and he was running Mordock and Cult of Speed with a weird off-meta Orc list. And one of the key things he had was max Def Coptas, and what he said was in our interview, you can check it out, it's public now, is that these guys were pretty much soaking up all his CP whenever he played this guy, WAAAGH, and then periodically maybe a shooting unit, I guess, with more DACA. But mostly these guys, they can pop 4 pinvolts, they can reactive. Maybe you want to ingress one, and then you have WAAAGH doing his own thing as well. So these guys being like one of the only, I guess, besides trucks, Cult of Speed units on this list with the little 3-man biker units is fine because they take up all the CP anyways. It's far from what I understand from people who play this style. Then we have 2 bricks of flash kits. Again, that's also what Stephen Paprine was bringing. Pretty much good counter to other mirror orc lists where you're like, I got big bricks of dudes. They get big shots. Now they're not free Buddhas, so they're not able to do the blast profile, but they still get 5 shots to get at their nearest target. So pretty fire still in that case. And they're just diverse per point. They don't depend on the detachment combos too much, and their access for CP and just picking stuff up throughout the game and just spread out damage and important units on the field, and which helps for your disruption style anyways. 2 Gretchen, 1 custom booster blaster, and a war track. So these units have been on my mind for a while. And me and my friend were just going over this. Shout out to Jordan a little bit, where he's like, I really like the war track, and I just reminded him of the war track when you're playing any other detachment doesn't have assault, it doesn't really have range, so it's not that great for getting its profile off. On the other hand, the custom booster blast that does have assault has more shots. At least if you can get it within its rapid fire range, it's a little bit more reliable. And but its -1 is only for shooting. But that is great to stock up right now in this edition. If you can do that, like people try to dislodge Def Coptas. If you pull this combo off, if you can get like your custom booster blasters off, and it goes into like a Sky Ray gunship maybe, or some other Tau unit, some kind of like mech. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't work against vehicles. I think it works against vehicles. That's the other one with the aura that doesn't. But you give them -1 and then +1, I guess, because they can ignore cover, but some of their units can, not all of them. And of course, different armies, they can't ignore cover as easily as Tau. But being able to stack these buffs greatly increases the durability of your units. And he brought 1 of each. And at least in this detachment, they can actually both do their assault thing. The real trick is just keeping them both alive long enough to actually get in that range. I guess the custom booster blaster could pop a 4 pinvolt also, which isn't to be slept on because those guys are way harder to kill. Buggies are way harder to kill than the enemy expects with that 4-up invuln. That's another thing I like about the Docker rigs, always having that invuln. Helps them kind of play that long-term game and really bogging down the enemy. So he has a Luda brick for that go turn. He has Zagrat with a small brick, which was interesting. The lack of like midfield presence is obvious on this list, which makes sense for it being a disruption list where he's trying to play the outskirts, the perimeters, shoot people that want to stand up in the middle, and then maybe somewhat countercharge here and there. The countercharging units would be sometimes Def Coptas, but also flash kits. Def Coptas, they are strength 5 base. They can go to strength 6. You can get them Lance. So against like a boy unit, again, they do great volume profile. They get blast. You give them sus 2. So against some matchups, you put them into the right things. I think this list can be pulled off. If you get it into the wrong matchup, though, he's going to have a hard time, which is always what we hear about cult disruption as a whole. So that being said, we'll move on from now for this disposition because we can still come back. I think there's other disruption dispositions. So chat whatever you guys say. Let me know what you guys think. But then we move on to Recon. So we got Anton Frost, who's actually running the speed wall with reconnaissance force. And again, I think this game might be the only Recon player. So with Purge the Foe and Recon might be the only 1-in-1. I might have missed it. Either way, there's only a couple of each of these disposition options between Purge and Recon. So I'm glad Anton Frost brought Recon because I really wanted to look at what one of these lists would be like, and he brought the speed wall with more DACA. This is an important combo because in my opinion, if you take If you take a Rolling Death, for example, or something else that isn't Mordaka for the one CP disposition, you lock the damage that it gives you. And Mordaka unlocks infantry units that can give you damage backbone, because currently, in my opinion, Speedwall really lacks that damage output. So Mordaka is kind of very important, and it kind of goes with like the assault thing, the theme. So shout out to Recon, another one where in theory Orks are liking it. I see people here and there drip feeding into it. I absolutely love that people are experimenting with dispositions, because the codex is going to be out and you have no idea if what you're running right now is even going to function the same way or be an option. And having the ability to play different dispositions is going to be strong and helpful for you. Not that you have to play all of them, but like at least if you play like two, right? Like, all right, I know how to play two, maybe just to kind of understand. We have Big Mac with shock attack on with the tank busters, no enhancements. Def Killer Ward Trike with a 3-man unit of bikers, no enhancements. 1 baby mech and then a WAAAGH Guts mech. 2 trucks. 2 Big Mac Docker rigs again. Now in the speed wall, I'll double check right now because it's been a while since I looked at the speed wall. I'm messing up my mic, guys. Watch me mess up all my audio here. So we'll see if I could just pull it up here or someone can let me know. But I'm pretty sure in Speedwall it gives options to unit like the Docker rig, the Big Mac Docker rig, if it has like a vehicle thing. But like I'll keep looking while I pull the strats up. We have 3 minimum size units of Def Coptus. That was surprising to me at first, but then I'm like, wait a second, they can move 24 inches. And they can just go over anything because they're fly. So they'll just take to the skies. So they're just straight up move over there. Boop. All right, took that table edge, table edge. What I needed to. I do wonder though, like, how does this list not run out of steam? That's always my question for reconnaissance kind of armies. But you know, we have then he comes out with stuff like this where he's playing with 2 big bricks of flash kits. So it's like, well, these guys are running at you as well while these units are flying around the corners of the field and doing their recon thing. If he declares a wall, he's running at you, flash hits, shooting at you, and then charging you and such. Yeah, you can do super ammo, super ammo, which is 1 orc unit from your army can have anti-vehicle 4+, anti-monster 4+. So in theory, you could give that to your Docker rig. That's one of them. He doesn't necessarily have the volume for that, but whatever. You could also remember put stuff in the trucks, which I've talked about, where you could give +2 strength from the truck from shooting firing deck from that. So that'd be pretty awesome. Yeah, and those are the ones that we've seen for there. But there's a little bit of weird stuff there. And then triple minimum size unit of Gretchen again, because you're probably doing reconnaissance. You could put these guys in reserves. People forget all the time. You could put Gretchen into reserves. Yeah, what's up, guys? At Speedwall, I do have some nice stratagems. I want to like this detachment so bad. We have a kill rig, so another just natural data sheet. And I was wondering, is there like a breakpoint it's giving out? In theory, it's strength breakpoint. Could be good on the flash kits. Could be just that it's a big thick thing that's on the field and using its las cannons per point and per wound. And that just kind of goes with like the rest of the list, right? You're just playing a lot of stuff. You're trying to draw your weapons away from the enemy being able to just wipe out everything on the field too quickly. Plays like its own independent monster. Then triple Rucker Truck Squig buggies. So these guys are the indirect buggies. They do ignore cover. So that's the thing, I guess. But I've used these guys in the past. I don't know. I really can't say what the tech is, other than I know you can fly around the field very quickly and like get close to people and put mortal wounds on them, because they have like, if I get close to you, I can put mortal wounds on you. That's like a data sheet ability they have. If they see you, they get decent firepower and like blast into you as well. So very unusual list. A lot of small units. It's very cool to actually see buggies being incorporated. Small units of Def Coptus. Big Mac Docker still finding their way on this list. And then a little bit of anti tank fire support and just long range firepower from like the tank busters, the looters, and stuff like that. So this list, nonetheless, Anton, looks very, very fun. So thank you very much for bringing that reconnaissance list, and it's very exciting to see. But I I look forward to actually seeing the results of this because I know I'm not sure about how this list runs. But we move on to one of the many take and hold lists. But I found this one to at least have like a different, diverse kind of output on some of the units and options that were picked. Remind you after this, chat. Let me know what you guys think. But I have other lists from similar dispositions we already went over that I can go back and pull up and look at again, so we can talk it out. So remember, guys, live chat. What's up? I'm here for you guys. But as for Beranger, I'm sorry. Hopefully I messed up your name, bro. Beranger. I don't know how to say your name. But great name. He brought free DACA. So of course this is a good old fashioned Freebooter Crew, more DACA, but it was about the list that the units that he actually brought. So he has Gazgo, Thraka, Painboy, and 20 boys with Bionic Workshop. Pretty awesome. A Beast Boss on Squigosaur with a 3-man unit of Squighog boys with the captain. So the captain is, in my opinion, a little bit of a slept on enhancement, which is another thing that makes Freebooter Crew actually even more enticing to bring, because you're actually able to clear Battle Shock, which is a problem for Orks in general. Well, just generally say for Orks in general this edition, because we do at least have that somewhat as a weakness. I know, like my Killicans really suffer from this. So having that on something like a Beast Boss and Squigosaur, which can stand in the open, kind of close enough to these units where they can removing Battle Shock, I absolutely love that. So you can do that to big bricks of models and armies and such. So that with the 3-man unit of pigs, then we have Mazrog Scragbag with another big brick of pigs. So we're already seeing difference here, which we do know that you can bring squigs and like the Hunt and Warhorde, and people always sleep on the fact that you bring them in Freebooter Crew. Before we moved into 11th edition, when I was ending 10th edition, I was just playing out Freebooter Crew when it was still those little circular objectives. I was playing pigs back then for the chance that you can, hey, I can tow onto objectives, auto 6 off the field. I can bring squigs onto reserves, right? Let's say I have a go turn with everything else on my go turn, and I bring a unit of pigs off from reserves. They'll probably be on an objective. Then from that objectives, I'll put that as my looted objectives, and then I'll declare a wall off that one for the secondary pig unit. So then I come in with another wave of pigs, which is very strong, like later in game when I have like a fresh unit of pigs that are in the wall that people have to try to dig out while I still have Gaz on the field. And that's if I haven't already just chose Gaz instead and let the pigs just freely walk around and punch you. We have a Big Mac with shock attack gun with a tank buster unit, and then of course get finder goggles for spotter squig, for ignoring cover. Boss Snickra, WAAAGH Gutsmech, 1 truck, which is I think all you need. If I have to guess what's going in that list, I was gonna guess just the tank busters, but whatever. Oh no, I would actually maybe guess a Luda unit. 1 unit of Gretchen, 2 units of Ludas, and a Storm Boy. I really like these leaderless units of Ludas with dead shiny shooters. That's another real big strength of Freebooter Crew, is that you can take these Luda bricks, you're just on their 1 go turn, boom, you bring them off reserves, you pop them on a truck, you run through a building, whatever you got to do, they get in range, they fire, they pop off, and then they're just standing around and maybe getting some charges off and stuff like that for 115 points. I love it. You can get close enough when you get in a truck. The truck makes you possibly close enough to get another AP. And then just 1 Storm Boy for the scoring. So what I really liked about this list was the diversity of assets. So he still has the brick of boys for that center field, that momentum, that continuous gas, killing almost anything brick. Then you have some pigs. 1 can go in reserve. 1 can act as another threat that could possibly tow on objectives and throttle its way upfield. You have tank busters and Ludas, so that on that go turn, you pop out, you pop trucks, you shoot stuff that's on the objectives. You have WAAAGH Gutsmech and Snickra to keep the enemy honest as well for shenanigans around the battlefield. 1 truck to quickly move those Ludas around. And then the other one, like I said, could also be in reserve, because you could put a small unit of pigs and Ludas, and then if I did my points right, in reserve. Or some people might say put the tank bus in the reserve because they don't have a truck. Depends on your layout or your matchup. So I actually really like this list as for like its change up. So I do know that maybe there's like, okay, bringing 60 to 80 boys or 60 boys for Zod, and then some Ludas would be a better list in theory, quote unquote. But I really like this kind of list. Seems really fun to play. Has all the strong units you want to see. And one thing I want to point out, as we're still going to look at other lists from other dispositions, is how much we're seeing WAAAGH out here. So you're going to see solo Maz, you're going to see leader Maz, you're going to see a bunch of different WAAAGHs out here. And I think that's the really exciting thing, is that if WAAAGH found his place once again in the game for that point cost. And I hope in the Codex, GW actually fixes some of his weaknesses. So that being said, chat, you guys let me know what disposition you want me to cover next. But from the first thing I'm going to say, because I already know, is my boy Jamazing. He said, did they cover the list with double Stompa and 120 grots yet? So we're actually going to cover that list now. And then you guys let me know after that what disposition maybe you want me to look at again, and I'll pull up another list from the disposition that you guys are interested live chat. And we'll go for a little longer after that. But yeah, I'll pull up that Stompa list because I did actually have that peeked up on the side. And shout out to that gift. Shout out to the live channel gifts that are here as well. And then my friend also here is saying these are also for teams, so not built for singles. So these built these lists. Yeah, for sure. They have that. But also at the same time, we see a lot of people take these kind of lists to singles anyways, and with very minor adjustments. So for example, there is a take and hold list that's a bunch of pigs that a lot of people were showing. Shout out to Adrian from Tabletop Titans for shouting us out. But when he was showing his favorite list, when I was watching him, he picked a squig list that was all take and hold. I think he was showing one off, and I think Art of War did that too. And we had actually shown a almost exact or very, very similar version of that list brought to a singles event where I went 4-1. So I understand that these are for teams generally, but mind you, a lot of people will take their teams list to singles and still have good results with them nonetheless, and you'll still face them, and they can still lead to people getting ideas on how to incorporate units they have or they want to use into the list or dispositions that they have anyway. So remember, this is never for copying and pasting. This is never for to tell you this is exactly how you have to play 40k. This is always just to get your squig juices flowing, the squig beer sipping while you kick back and write your list so you can get more ideas and such. So thanks for bringing that up for people to have context when they're new. But yeah, this is just for thought, efficacious thought, which I think it generally is. And I have that 120 grot list right here. That's so funny. I think I pulled it up right there. There it is. It's called Stompa Family and 3 Babysitters. So here is the list. Also, someone said for War Track, suppresses it's -1 to hit roll. It didn't say -1 for shooting. That's I was talking about the custom Booster Blaster. So the buggy's only for shooting. And then you're right. The War Track is just straight -1 to hit at all times. So the difference is the volume at range, in my opinion, for the custom Booster Blaster, but it still works because anyway, stuff that far away from you is going to be at range anyway, so who cares? And then the War Track is when people are starting to move in and make their moves on you. You can run up with the War Track, give them -1 to hit, set them up to be weak on the counter punch. And remember, guys, the counter punch can also be interested in, can be set up for, well, I'm going to -1 to hit that Terminator unit, the Blade Guard unit, the Vitrix unit, that Deathwing Knight, whatever, right? Some kind of combat unit. You're going to make it -1 to hit. You're going to run up Carrier War Track. You're going to declare the WAAAGH. You're going to run into a bunch of different targets, and maybe someone has to decide they're going to have to do an interrupt, right? You're like, I really have to let this gas unit go first, or the Smiles unit go first, whatever. Because you -1 that other enemy target, and your unit wasn't oath because it's not a priority unit to your enemy, well, you might just say, okay, fine, I'll let you interrupt over there, bear -1 to hit, right? So War Track, you can kind of think ahead sometimes on that. So I'm glad you brought that up because you're right. The fact that the last person brought up that he brought that on the recon list. Where was that? Right here in this one. On the recon list where he brought wasn't recon, was it? Was it recon? Which one was that? Oh, I think it was Cult of Speed. Yeah, it was Cult of Speed. Where he brought custom Booster Blaster and a War Track right here. It's like this one's for maybe early game, and then this one's for the go turn game, right? It's a good way to look at that. So I was trying to point that out. So thanks, I'm glad that you brought that up so we could talk about that. But yeah, that's my opinion, at least from what I was seeing. So it's a cool tech piece. And then I lost my Stampa list. Where is it? Here it is. All right, so here we are with the crazy Stampa list where it's Stampa family and 3 babysitters. So let's take a look. It's Zagrot Warsnaga, Let's Go, Dirty Mike and the Boys, a Big Brick of Gretchen, and then they have Dead Shiny Shooters. Not to be slept on the go turn, they get sustain. Then if they're close enough to you, they get 2 shots each with sustain, hitting on 3s because they're Gretchen. They normally hit on 4s, but then Zod gives them +1, so they'll be 3s. So they're possibly deadly, right? You can maybe use a strat on them, maybe an AP. Who knows? Some kind of crazy stuff happens here. 2 baby mechs, you know what they're doing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units of Bricks of Gretchen. 1 has Dead Shiny Shooters, but none of these units have the run herders as their leaders. So I do like that, at least as an option for point flexibility. If they were to bring the run herders, all these units would cost 20 an extra 10 points. So that's how you get to that point cost. And then 2 Stampas on the list. That's the Git's entire list. Now, ever since I've seen this, I'm like, come on, is this real? You know what I mean? Like, is this real? Quit playing with me. So I don't know. Oh, and his position is priority assets. I don't know if this is going to be legitimate because, so let's say, so I'll play devil's advocate. So I'll play for the bad and the good. We'll do both sides here while you and I are chatting. You get so. From my experience from priority assets, let's say I'm playing take and hold, like as the enemy I'm fighting. And in my mission, it says I just have to stand on an objective that's in no man's land, and I have to do an action. And so I could just stand on mine. I could stand, maybe on the middle, and then I could just do an action in my home. That's it. And then the take and hold player, he has to stand on more than me to get the additional points for his cards, the stipulation. Therefore, a lot of the time, the take and hold players like, well, I have to go get you now and push you off the center. So your Grouse can reactive. Zod can reactive 12 for some reason. He can also scout early to do an early 1, so you can set up boom on the one of your, depending on the, I haven't done every single layout and such and whatever, but depending on your layout, there is a chance your Stampa, one of your Stampas, 1, can actually move towards the mid table or at least move once in the game. So there are chances where they can run around and kill stuff as well. So I don't know in all reality how this is going to work, because on the other hand, then you look at the priority versus priority, but matchup where I think you'd run out of assets for just doing actions, where if the enemy just ties up all your grout, you can't do it. But that's where, like was brought up earlier, teams comes into play, where you can avoid getting it into a matchup like that. So it could be that someone just uses it as a counter to a take and hold, where you're like, I have a buttload of AC, and if you think you're tough, I'm also gonna just walk up on you and shoot you and fight you with the Stampas. And I'm pretty sure, which is funny, I don't know if this will happen or matter, but both these Stampas have a 12-inch aura to +1 leadership. So in theory, you can make your Gretchen leadership 6 for those mid team ones. Also, you can put Gretchen a Gretchen brick inside the Stampa for at least the one that's moving closer to the middle. So there's a chance that, hey, he walks up in there, and then if the enemy's trying to do like a duplicate activation into you, where they want to shoot your Gretchen and then charge your Stampa, then you can either reactive back the Gretchen back in anyways to avoid being shot, and then still have them just fall out of it and onto the objective later, or you can reactive them towards the enemy to try to set up and stopping their move block for their charges or something. So the big bricks of Gretchen have their play. I don't know, like I said, how real this is for setting it up, but this get brought up. So shout out to Sijep, and thank you for chat for saying what this one is. And yeah, like they're saying, I think the team's going for the fact that people are just saying you can't kill them. Yeah, exactly. Any of the units that can kill your Gretchen, or if the people start shooting at your Gretchen earlier or expose themselves early to try to kill your Gretchen, you can start charging into people with your Gretchen after your stomp a shot and either killing bricks, and then your Gretchen, at least when they have their 5-up invulns up, like your first wave of them, so like the first half, maybe the first 60, like sod and then 2 bricks. run up, charge, OC bomb the objective, stomp us, shoot everybody that's in the back. Like there's a bunch of weird stuff. Your mechs are doing actions somewhere near the middle. Because remember, this mech can get Lona, so he can be doing it. So one of your stompers might move towards your natural, then the other one moves towards the middle, if they can move at all. If I might be using the word move liberally. If they could be positioned near, and then the baby mech might be doing that. So I don't know. I personally haven't run 2 Stompas. I might have to though to this weekend just because of the stupid list. I don't know. But either way, that was a cool list to pull over. But let's just do a couple more here. If people want to see, here's another fun. We'll do another because we're already on priority. We'll keep up the priority list. Let me take some of these off on the list I showed just so that I don't saturate you guys with the same list. So here's another priority assets. Sadly, there is no like the hunt and rolling death. I personally think it's fun, but I've never thought it was exceptionally competitive. Just strong and kind of fun. And I've actually seen it more played with Purge. But in this case, we got another Dread Mob and more DACA. Priority assets. I would say this is a bit more of a standard, quote unquote, a version of Dread Mob, but there's still some fun tech pieces in here. So he has a big mega shock attack gun, a Luda brick, another shock attack gun, another Luda brick, and then a shock attack gun, Luda brick. So of course it's all 30, and then a tank buster brick with Big Mech. Really works really well actually because you get +1 hit, +1 to wound, and the custom mega blast has the same range as tank buster profile. He gives them reroll advances so they can at least still get in somewhere, and then he fights better than a shock attack gun. So when he gets into a fight, it's actually kind of good. So, and then he has Get Finder Goggles. So I actually like this combo a lot, and it's a good way to save if you're doing duplicates on shock attack guns or whatever. A fun thing here he brought as well was Mazrog's Scrag Bag. We're seeing a lot of random Mazes in places. Might to get enemies to do commitments early. Could be for late game bullying. It could be just because they're tough and can set up heroics. Could be a tough action deliverer where you're like, okay, Maz is gonna go up and do it once. What are you gonna do to Maz? What are you going to send over here to kill Miles? Because he's small. He's still a little kind of small enough to hide, at least on some layouts. So love my Mazrog. And then I'm glad that he's being brought alone. And he's even brought in a detachment that he gets no buffs in. Mazda, Gutsmack, always. A Gretchen, 3 trucks, 2 DACA rigs, 2 5-man units of Gretchen, and then 3 Storm Boys with 1 tank buster brick. So this was a little bit more on the edge of common for Dread Mob lists, which some people might say it's unfortunate because it has low walkers, but at least it has some DACA dreads. Another really unusual Dread Mob list that we see here. I'll just pull up all the priority asset ones that I have for right now. And I think this is a different language. Sorry, but this. What's up, Remy? He said test. He brought Gaz and 20 boys still, and then he brought the big bricks of Ludas, where he still brought 3 of them, and a tank buster combo. You typically only need 1 because in that one go turn, you're jumping out, you're killing the toughest enemy tank thing, and then because of the Ludas, for like I said earlier, the combos you can do, big shells for bigger gets and stuff, you can usually use them to kill like other vehicles. Only 2 Gretchen units, 3 trucks, 2 5-man Gretchen, and the Storm Boy. Oh no, sorry, 1 Flash Gate and 2 5-man Storm Boys. So another odd one because they actually brought Gazgul, and then another one where they brought shout out to Alex Cameron where he brought a Zagrot brick. Still more bricks of Ludas as always. WAAAGH DACA, 3 Gretchen, 3 trucks, and then triple DACA rigs. I really like DACA rigs in Dread Mob because I've actually enjoyed the -1 damage that comes into play, but also just what they can do when you give them rerolls to hit. 2 big bricks of flash kits. Now this is I think really good in any of these armies that are trying to supplement firepower or damage, but they don't have too much obvious ways to synergize that damage, so they just kind of bring it well-rounded with the flash kits and more DACA. So that's why it's good. Like we've seen it with Speed One, more DACA, or in this case, Dread Mob, more DACA. I'm not gonna lie, my Dread Mob list, one of them does have 20 flash kits also, but all of them have at least 1 big 10-man get brick. They don't have the rapid fire. In my opinion, they don't need it, but it gets them to the 50 shots when you get within 12, but you don't always get within 12. So up to you. And then 1 commando unit. I do find the commando is still somewhat important, like I stated earlier. If you got Zod, and he does have Zod, So those were the interesting priority missions, and then I'll show you guys a couple. If you guys are still, what's going on to the chat? What's up, chat? A couple more of the disruption ones, because I had a couple of disruption lists here that I thought were just really that people would bring them, but they were kind of cool. So here's in from Sergey, where he brought disruption is blue. WAAAGH solves what tactics mean. All right, dude, I'm with you on that, you cunning kid. So you got my attention, Sergey. So he has freebooter crew and more DACA, but instead of choosing to tech into take and hold for his team, he chose to do disruption. I'm pretty interested in that, right? That's pretty interesting, because maybe his teams was like, well, we can use a Necron for take and hold or something like that. But this one right here, disruption is blue, freebooter crew, I think it's going to look similar. Let's see. We have the Gaz with the Brick of Boys and the Pain Boy, pretty common there. A Beast Balls and Squigosaur with a small unit of Squigs, pretty awesome. A Shock Attack gun with Ignore Cover and Tank Buster crew. Another Tank Buster crew with Rapid Fire. Mazrong, Scragbag, Solo, WAAAGH, Gutsmack, double trucks, one DACA rig, two Gretchen, and then two leaderless Luda bricks. I love that. Just support DACA, cheap, on the go, call a wand gets up the field. It gets a little hard where you're like, well, this or flash hits. Well, the difference here is sometimes you can say that the cost is usually the thing, but the difference is the flash gets fight more, they have more wounds, but the Flutas are a little bit more reliable, because on sustain and 4 rerolls the hit, you're still more likely to at least get turn out on the shooting damage than for the flash gets, even with like 12-inch range and rapid fire. With their 50 shots, there's a chance that they just whiff because they get no rerolls and anything like that. So give or take on each person. If you're sometimes it just comes down the points though. Nonetheless, I thought that was a pretty cool odd version of Orks disruption. I don't know where he's going to get his action monkeys from, personally, but hey, he picked that list and he brought it, and I thought it was cool to show it. And then another unusual take on a Dread Mob list was a Mordaka disruption list here, where it's Dread Mob and Mordaka. So it still has the basic Luda bricks with shock attack guns, which is 3 of them, and the Big Mac with shock attack gun. That's almost like the staple combo right there. Boss Necron, WAAAGH, 1 Gretchen. You would think when you're playing maybe something like disruption, you'd want a bunch of Gretchen, but I guess not. So 3 trucks, 3 DACA rigs, which are pretty sick in Dread Mob, I won't lie. 1 big brick of flash kits, and then a small unit, followed by Mandos and a Storm Boy. So, I mean, we're here for it, and hopefully he does well with that one, but I was not sure. Maybe disruption is just for the team, and he's figured out how to make it work. But I thought that was pretty exciting nonetheless. And then last but not least, I'll show maybe 1 or 2 take and hold lists that I actually liked from here. I mean, there's a lot of cool lists, but people also on other channels covered some cool take and hold lists already and such, and I'm sure you guys already seen a lot of them. So don't want to bore you too much, but I have a cool take and hold list that I liked here. And shout out to the live chat. Oh, and he said Jew champion with his list. Oh, Jew with his list 184 player Path to Glory opened some weeks ago with the Dread Mob list. Yeah, the name looked familiar, but that's pretty awesome. Dread Mob's a real deal, man. Remember on this channel, the first, the last, the most consistent one to say Dread Mob was legit and had a way, and it always did have a way. Probably the most Dread Mob content on the internet. But thanks for that. Thanks for the heads up. Hoping to see more Mac guns. Granted, how non-direct, how the hazardous doesn't go off. So I can say a little bit about that. I've been considering it. What happens is it takes a while for the enemy to actually expose themselves for them to have the ideal targets. The bubble checkers sometimes are cool, but because you don't know what profile you're getting, it kind of holds you back a little bit. Smash gun's a little too low volume, and then there's a little bit of interesting play to say about the 36-inch custom Mega Blaster now. So, but usually it comes down to, for that points cost, you can bring Ludas, you can bring bricks of flash kits. They're getting hidden, they're moving up the field, they're taking ground, they're playing the mission, they're playing helping you play the primary sometimes, or it's stuff like that. It's the duality, and mech guns simply don't have them. If you were to stick a character on them, I actually almost implore I would almost say big mechs, because you can advance faster and like move through buildings and terrain, so maybe they can still like reposition, but really they don't. Whenever I play them, they kind of like hardly move, and then the Shakathagger does most of the work. So hard to say, but I want to bring that up now. Yeah, I'm implying that they're shooting at something that's on an objective, because unless you're in a dire situation or something like that, there's almost no time that you'll shoot your looters at something that isn't on an objective, unless you're like, well, I have no better targets and I'm hoping to chip this thing down, you know, or maybe you're like standing still and you have heavy and you can ignore cover, you know, and you're like, well, because I'm ignoring cover and I have heavy and I reroll ones, now I'll shoot the looters. But when I'm talking about what they do in time I reroll hits, I'm generally assuming you're playing them optimally, so you're shooting at someone at an objective. On the go turn, we have sustain one. You can assume that whenever I'm mentioning a unit, I'm talking about it in its optimal situation and condition that it's being utilized, not in like a odd, unusual way, just because I can't account for that. But yes, you're right. There's ways they can shoot not on the wall, but generally, that's when you bring them out. So this is the Freebooter Taken Hold Equatorial and Freebooter crew list. So I might bring my friend up on here who's been playing with this style of list, and we might talk about this for the members chat and have like a conversation on live on that. But this has been getting some looks. It does have a little bit of downside to maybe something like more Naka Freebooter mix up because of like the mirror and the blast and stuff like that. At the same time, though, I do think the Equatorial Horde can also give you higher scoring differentials. And if you're playing something like teams where you can set them up in some matchups, that's where you can actually pull that off. So it makes sense to me here. And I didn't see too many of these Equatorial and Freebooter crew, but maybe I just missed them. But let's take a look at this one at least. We have Gazgo, Paint Boys, Boys, a Beast Boss with the Magic Cards, Magic Map. So they can, I said Magic Card, Razgit's Magic Map. So this is the redeploy one. So you can pick 3 units and redeploy them. Thought that was pretty cool. So we have that with the 10-man unit of Beast Boss, Snagger Boys. A Big Boss with Pain Boys and Bionic Workshop in a Boys unit. That's always interesting to see because you already get sustain from Freebooter crew, but sometimes you're in a fight and you're not on that objective. So that means that unit that's maybe fighting on another objective, like it's go turn, and you're fighting on no man's land, which is not an objective, or on the enemy's natural or whatever it is, and your boys can actually still get access to sustain and lethal, whether if it's from Akari or if they're using the strat. So that's the cool part of taking a brick with the Big Boss and them still having the Bionic Workshop. Then you move on to this 4th unit, which is a War Boss with Unkillable Scourge, so you can get back up, and Pain Boy, and then a big brick of boys there as well, and then Zagrant with another brick. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 mobs of pretty mobs. Sorry, so 3 of them are boys, and then 1 Zod, so it's pretty standard, and then some Beast Snagger boys thrown in there as well. WAAAGH Gutsmech, 1 Truck, 1 Gretchen, 1 Commando, 1 Storm Boy. So I actually really like this list. Pretty straightforward, pretty obvious. I run up, I smash into you. You know, I can scout and then I can also redeploy. So let's think about that here. So scouting means, in theory, like if you watch the Equatorial video, you can end up saying, well, I'm going to choose these boy units to scout, which means I can not have them on the field, and then during the scouting phase bring them on the field. And then you can also have magic maps redeploy so that he can actually redeploy mobs as well. So you can end up, oh, I'm going to move forward and then I'm going to redeploy, so you can have Gaz and Zod somewhere on the field and then redeploy them to the other side of the field and then bring a different mob of boys onto the field right there. or you could just scout one forward and then remove your gas and everything like that. So really cool, fun stuff to see, and little fun odd shenanigans. So I wanted to show this, and Mark Morrow, I've seen him in the past like covered his list and stuff, so I know he thought this out. But it was taking hold. So this is pretty sick, real cool to run back and forth, and to be cunning with the way that he's taking those lists. So one of my more favorite taking hold lists. So that being said, I think there's gonna be a lot of fun Orks turnarounds. Hopefully there's a matchup, a mix-up of Ork performances, and it's not just taking hold that are doing all of the winning for their teams, but the Orks having the ability to even have lists in every disposition and to be taken seriously in at least 3 out of the 5 dispositions is pretty awesome to see. I see that continuing in our codex, and I hope that encourages people to keep being diverse in their output and the units that they collect. To remember, that's always what we encourage on this channel, is to play the units you want to play optimally and just enjoy your games of 40K. So as you see here on the WTC, even at the highest level, people find ways to have fun, whether it's playing double stampas, whether it's bringing pigs, or just mobs of boys and being totally meta. So that being said, this Friday, also tune in because we have Mark Perry. You guys know Mark Perry, Big Mac Brandon, who's also going to show up as well, and we're going to do a tier list video. So it'll be a 3-way tier list video. That way, if we get any ties on opinion, or we get any differences of opinion, we have a way to do a tiebreaker on them. So of course, be sure to join us live. And there's always one thing to keep in mind, is don't cross our wall, because we'll knock your teeth out. Whoa.